All right, Europe's economy certainly a big topic at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Let's get more insight from Nicholas Economides, professor at New York University's Stern School of Business. Nicholas, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, Nicholas, some strong words from Klaus Schwab, the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. He says he is concerned about the disintegration of the European Union. He says the migration crisis and the possible Brexit, that's the UK leaving the Union, are two existential challenges. Existential. Nicholas, let's start with the migration crisis. How big of a concern is this?
Well, it's a huge problem. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are coming in illegally, and there is no set standard mechanism to admit them. And they end up, they're trying to go to the northern European countries. Some of them, though, get stuck in Greece and Italy. It's a huge problem. The Europe has not been prepared for this crisis.
Well, another factor thrown in the mix here is commodities, and Schwab is concerned that the crash in commodities, oil, for example, hovering around 12-year lows, is concerning that Schwab is saying he's worried that that will trigger a bigger wave of migration into Europe, and that will actually eclipse the current refugee crisis. In light of this, Nicholas, what can we expect out of Davos in terms of steps at resolving these issues?
Well, I don't actually believe that the low oil is going to create a bigger migration, bigger refugees crisis. I think the refugees are coming from war-torn places like Syria, Afghanistan, northern Pakistan, and so on, some parts of Africa. It's not really because of purely economic reasons. But coming back to your main question about Davos, there's only that much Davos can do. I mean, it's more of a forum of discussion, of exchange of ideas, rather than a place of concerted action, of real decisions. What is needed is for the European Union methods, bodies, to be upgraded, to be prepared, so that resolutions do happen when issues show up. We had 3 successive memoranda between Greece and the European Union have not quite solved the problem, but each time Europe was unprepared to deal with the crisis. And now there is this huge refugee crisis and Europe is unprepared again. So there is a problem. The institutions in Europe need to be worked out, need to be strengthened.
All right, well, something that they could be prepared for, because there's a lot of pre-warning, is the issue of a possibility of a Brexit. David Cameron will be at Davos. He's pushing for EU reform, and the UK is set to have a referendum by the end of next year on whether or not to remain a member of the European Union. How big of a concern is this at Davos?
I think that's a huge concern. Britain has to decide where its future is, if it's within Europe or outside Europe. And there are forces within Britain going in either direction. I think, at least my opinion, from a business point of view, Britain is much better off within the European Union. And of course, that would be good for Europe as well. But what is going to happen in the end, if it's going to be just a hard bargain by the English, or if it's going to be Brexit, I really don't know. My opinion is that it's much more likely to be a hard bargain in which the UK stays in Europe.
You know, Nicholas, you touched upon Greece, and with all of these other issues, well, the Eurozone debt problem seemed to have really been pushed down the agenda. It just doesn't seem to be a big focus now. What does this mean for Greece?
Well, Greece is not out of the woods at all. It's not in the headlines, but problems have not really been solved. There is a left-wing government which paradoxically does exactly what the Europeans want. At the same time, recently, the main opposition party, the center-right party, New Democracy, elected a leader, a very distinguished leader with a reform program. So there is a possibility that within a year or so, we might have a different government in Greece. But the real problems, the underlying problems in Greece, the pension system, the taxation system, have not really been fixed. And they haven't even been discussed, in my opinion, on the right basis within Greece. So these problems remain, and I'm afraid that unless they are solved within the next year or so, Greece will come back again to the European Union asking for a new loan.
All right, more troubles on the horizon. Nicholas, very quickly, if you could list one concrete, tangible result that you hope comes out of Davos, what would it be?
A better understanding of the problems. Davos cannot really solve things, but if people talk to each other, they usually understand where they stand. And then hopefully within the next few months, some solution will show up, some solution can take shape.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, as always, Nicholas Economides, professor at New York University's Stern School of Business.